It was a crisp autumn evening in October 1977 when Veronica Lane, a 24-year-old kindergarten teacher in Wichita, Kansas, left her classroom after finishing a late parent-teacher conference. Veronica was known for her radiant smile, gentle patience with her students, and unwavering dedication to her community. That night, she walked home through the familiar streets of her neighborhood but never arrived. Her roommate Deborah Mills noticed her absence when she failed to return for dinner. Calls went unanswered, and by the next morning, Veronica's family grew alarmed and reported her missing. Detective Henry Calloway, a seasoned officer in the Wichita Police Department, was assigned to the case. From the outset, it was clear that this was not a case of a simple disappearance. Veronica was meticulous in her routines, rarely deviating from her schedule. Her sudden absence suggested something more sinister. Within hours, the streets surrounding her home were canvassed. Neighbors were questioned and flyers were distributed in nearby communities. Initial leads were scarce. One neighbor remembered a man loitering near the school late in the evening, his presence unusual but not immediately suspicious at the time. Another witness described a green van parked across the street from Veronica's apartment building, its driver watching the area intently. Despite these small pieces of information, no concrete evidence emerged, leaving detectives frustrated and the community in unease. Veronica's family became central to the search. Flyers adorned lampposts, local radio broadcasts shared alerts, and volunteers scoured parks, alleyways, and vacant lots. The first weeks were exhaustive, with hundreds of tips flooding the police department, most leading nowhere. Days turned to weeks, weeks into months, and months into years. Despite the exhaustive search, Veronica's trail went cold, leaving her family, friends, and colleagues in growing despair. The case remained a haunting presence in Wichita. Locals remembered the young teacher whose bright future was abruptly interrupted. In 2024, the Kansas Bureau of Investigation's Cold Case Unit decided to reopen the investigation, assigning Detective Marissa Hayes, known for her meticulous attention to detail and tenacity in solving decades-old cases, to the file. Hayes reviewed every scrap of evidence, from photographs to witness statements to physical items stored for nearly half a century. Advances in forensic science became a turning point. Hair and fiber samples, once considered inconclusive due to technological limitations, were re-examined. DNA sequencing methods unavailable in 1977 provided clarity. Partial fingerprints preserved from the original investigation were cross-referenced against national databases, revealing a match to Leonard Barrett, a man with prior convictions and a residence in Wichita during the time of Veronica's disappearance. Barrett's past criminal record and his presence in the area placed him under immediate scrutiny. Witnesses from 1977 were re-interviewed using memory enhancement techniques. One former neighbor recalled a tall, thin man standing near the school parking lot shortly after Veronica left. A delivery driver described a green van parked suspiciously, with a figure inside watching the area. The consistency of these decades-old accounts, when combined with modern forensic evidence, reinforced Barrett as a person of interest. Investigators reconstructed Veronica's final movements. After leaving the school at approximately 8:45 p.m., she took her usual route home, a familiar path lined with streetlights and neighborhood houses. Barrett's movements were cross-referenced with witness statements, residential records, and employment logs, confirming he was near Veronica at multiple critical points along her route. Each verified interaction strengthened the emerging timeline. A detailed search of Barrett's previous residences and storage spaces yielded significant evidence. Items of clothing, personal belongings, and even discarded materials contained fibers matching those found near Veronica's usual path home. Hair fragments, confirmed through DNA testing to belong to Veronica, were also discovered among his possessions. While each piece of evidence might appear minor alone, collectively they formed a strong, undeniable connection. Interrogation was approached with careful strategy. Detective Hayes presented Barrett with the forensic evidence including DNA results, fiber analysis, and fingerprint matches, along with corroborated witness statements. Barrett initially denied involvement, claiming his presence in the area was coincidental. Investigators observed subtle hesitations, inconsistencies, and signs of evasion. Faced with the weight of evidence, Barrett admitted to being near Veronica, but attempted to minimize his actions and deflect responsibility. Spatial analysis of Barrett's movements became crucial. Investigators mapped his confirmed locations alongside Veronica's reconstructed route. Behavioral patterns from his prior offenses explained how he could have encountered her, and reinforced the plausibility of his involvement. Each intersection of movement and evidence contributed to a clear and cohesive narrative. Community involvement remained central to the investigation. Friends, neighbors, and colleagues of Veronica provided detailed recollections of her habits, routines, and character. Their insights helped investigators contextualize forensic findings and validate witness statements, maintaining a focus on Veronica as a person and not merely as a case number. All forensic evidence underwent meticulous re-examination. DNA was verified for accuracy, fibers were independently analyzed, and fingerprints scrutinized using modern technology. Documentation was detailed and exhaustive, ensuring each piece could withstand courtroom scrutiny. Investigators also examined Barrett's activities in the weeks surrounding Veronica's disappearance. Employment records, residential histories, and communication logs were cross-referenced with witness accounts and forensic evidence, confirming multiple opportunities for him to encounter Veronica. Each link eliminated alternative explanations, gradually narrowing the field of possibilities. The Cold Case Unit meticulously organized findings for prosecutorial review. Chronological timelines, visual reconstructions, and detailed maps illustrated the sequence of events. The case could now be followed logically, demonstrating how each piece of evidence interlinked with Barrett's movements and actions. Community engagement continued throughout the investigation. Residents organized remembrance events, shared lingering memories, and maintained public attention on the case. Their involvement highlighted the importance of persistence, vigilance, and collective effort in resolving long-standing mysteries. Veronica's parents, James and Carol Lane, provided invaluable insight into her routines, daily habits, and personal character. Their testimony aligned with witness accounts and forensic findings, emphasizing the human dimension of the case and reinforcing why decades of waiting had made resolution so critical. Investigators systematically ruled out alternative explanations. Coincidence, accidental transfer of evidence, and misidentification were carefully considered and excluded through detailed cross-referencing of witness accounts, forensic data, and reconstructed timelines. The combination of DNA, fiber, and fingerprint evidence, corroborated by witness statements, produced a coherent narrative, leaving little room for doubt. Detective Hayes reflected on the painstaking process. Every fiber, every fragment, every recollection mattered. Even after nearly 50 years, these details formed the foundation for uncovering the truth. Her dedication exemplified the Cold Case Unit's guiding philosophy. Careful, methodical persistence combined with modern science could bring justice to cases once considered unsolvable. By 2025, investigators had assembled a fully verified case against Leonard Barrett. Every aspect of Veronica Lane's disappearance was reconstructed, analyzed, and corroborated. Physical evidence, behavioral analysis, witness testimony, and Barrett's partial admissions formed a compelling, legally robust case ready for prosecution. Veronica's story, once obscured by decades of uncertainty, had been illuminated through modern forensic science, dedication, and collaboration between law enforcement and the community. Preserved evidence, re-examined with advanced methods, transformed a cold case into a path toward justice. The narrative highlighted both scientific precision and the human story behind her disappearance. The reconstructed timeline, combined with witness accounts and forensic findings, established a clear chronological sequence of events. Jurors would later be able to follow the investigation logically, understanding how each piece of evidence connected Barrett to Veronica, and how the events of that night unfolded. Through tireless effort, the cold case unit not only identified a suspect but reconstructed Veronica's final hours in extraordinary detail. Every investigative step preserved the integrity of the case, ensuring that when it reached the courtroom, justice could be delivered with clarity and confidence. Veronica Lane's story demonstrated that even decades-old disappearances could be solved. Persistence, modern forensic methods, and community involvement illuminated the truth, providing long-overdue closure. Families, investigators, and communities contributed collectively, ensuring that no detail was overlooked and every lead was thoroughly explored. By combining historical evidence with contemporary investigative techniques, uncertainty was transformed into accountability. Once Leonard Barrett was identified as a person of interest, the Kansas Bureau of Investigation's Cold Case Unit intensified its efforts. Detective Marissa Hayes meticulously reviewed all preserved evidence, photographs, and reports from 1977. Despite the decades that had passed, careful documentation allowed investigators to assemble a detailed timeline of Veronica Lane's final movements. Whitaker's movements were reconstructed using employment records, residential histories, and eyewitness accounts from the night of her disappearance. Witnesses were re-interviewed using memory enhancement techniques designed to recover fading recollections. One former neighbor recalled a tall man standing near the school parking lot shortly after Veronica had left. Another described a green van parked across the street, its driver watching the area closely. Though these memories were decades old, their consistency, when combined with modern forensic evidence, reinforced Barrett as the primary suspect. Physical evidence became central to building the case. Fibers collected from the alley behind the school matched clothing previously owned by Barrett. Hair fragments preserved from the original investigation were successfully sequenced, confirming they belonged to Veronica. Partial fingerprints re-examined using modern technology placed Barrett at key locations along Veronica's route. Each piece of evidence, minor in isolation, collectively formed a compelling chain linking him to the crime. A detailed search of Barrett's former residences and storage areas yielded crucial findings. Clothing and personal items contained fibers consistent with those recovered from the alley. Hair fragments, confirmed to belong to Veronica, were discovered among his possessions. While individually these items might have been dismissed, together they formed a strong connection to the disappearance. Interrogation of Barrett was conducted with strategic precision. Detective Hayes presented him with DNA results, fiber comparisons, fingerprint matches, and corroborated witness statements. Barrett initially denied involvement, claiming his presence in the area was coincidental. Investigators observed hesitations, inconsistencies, and subtle signs of evasion. When confronted with the mounting evidence, Barrett admitted being near Veronica, but attempted to minimize his actions and downplay his involvement. Spatial analysis became critical. Investigators mapped Barrett's confirmed locations alongside Veronica's reconstructed path, highlighting intersections supported by witness statements and forensic findings. Behavioral patterns from Barrett's past, including prior offenses and suspicious activity, provided context for how he could have encountered her and reinforced the plausibility of his involvement. Community involvement continued to play a pivotal role. Friends, neighbors, and colleagues of Veronica provided detailed recollections of her routines, habits, and personality. Their insights helped investigators contextualize forensic findings and validate witness statements. Maintaining a focus on Veronica as a person, rather than a missing case file, forensic evidence underwent meticulous re-examination. DNA samples were retested for accuracy, fibers were independently verified, and fingerprints analyzed with modern technology. Every piece of evidence was thoroughly documented, ensuring it could withstand scrutiny in court and reinforcing the credibility of the investigation. Investigators also examined Barrett's activities surrounding Veronica's disappearance. Employment records, residential histories, and communication logs were cross-referenced with witness accounts and forensic evidence, confirming multiple opportunities for him to encounter Veronica. Each link strengthened the case and systematically eliminated alternative explanations. The cold case unit meticulously organized the findings for prosecutorial review. Chronological timelines, visual reconstructions, and detailed maps illustrated the sequence of events. The narrative could now be followed logically, showing how each piece of evidence interlinked with Barrett's movements and actions. Community engagement remained vital. Residents organized remembrance events, shared lingering details, and maintained public attention on the case. Their continued interest demonstrated the importance of persistence, vigilance, and collective effort in resolving long-standing mysteries. Veronica's parents, James and Carol Lane, provided invaluable insights into her habits, daily routines, and personal character. Their testimony aligned with witness accounts and forensic findings, emphasizing the human dimension of the case and reinforcing why decades of waiting had made resolution essential. Investigators systematically ruled out alternative explanations. Coincidence, accidental evidence transfer, and misidentification were carefully considered and eliminated through detailed cross-referencing of witness statements, forensic data, and reconstructed timelines. The combination of DNA, fiber, and fingerprint evidence, corroborated by witness statements, created a coherent narrative, leaving minimal room for doubt. Detective Hayes reflected on the investigation. Every fiber, every fragment, every recollection mattered. Even after nearly 50 years, these details formed the foundation for uncovering the truth. Her words exemplified the cold case unit's philosophy. Careful persistence and scientific rigor could bring justice to cases long thought unsolvable. By 2025, investigators had assembled a fully verified case against Leonard Barrett. Every aspect of Veronica Lane's disappearance was reconstructed and corroborated. Physical evidence, behavioral analysis, witness testimony, and Barrett's partial admissions formed a compelling, legally robust case ready for prosecution. Veronica's story, once shrouded in decades of uncertainty, had been illuminated through modern forensic science, dedication, and collaboration between law enforcement and the community. Preserved evidence, re-examined using advanced techniques, transformed a cold case into a path toward justice. The narrative highlighted both scientific precision and the human story behind her disappearance. The reconstructed timeline, combined with witness accounts and forensic findings, established a clear chronological sequence of events. Jurors would later be able to follow the investigation logically, understanding how each piece of evidence connected Barrett to Veronica and how the events of that night unfolded. Through tireless dedication, the cold case unit not only identified a suspect but reconstructed Veronica's final hours in extraordinary detail. Every investigative step preserved the integrity of the case, ensuring that when it reached the courtroom, justice could be delivered with clarity and confidence. Veronica Lane's story demonstrated that even decades-old disappearances could be resolved. Persistence, modern forensic methods, and community involvement illuminated the truth, providing long-overdue closure. Families, investigators, and communities contributed collectively, ensuring no detail was overlooked and every lead thoroughly explored. By combining historical evidence with contemporary investigative techniques, uncertainty was transformed into accountability. The Wichita courthouse was thick with anticipation and decades-long tension. Families, friends, and community members filled every seat, many still carrying the weight of uncertainty that had haunted Veronica Lane's disappearance for nearly 50 years. At the center, her parents, James and Carol Lane, clutched each other's hands, faces etched with sorrow but also relief. The long-awaited pursuit of justice had finally reached its moment. The prosecution opened by painting a vivid portrait of Veronica as a vibrant, dedicated young woman whose life touched many in her community. She was remembered not just as a missing person, but as a person with warmth, intelligence, and a profound dedication to the children she taught. Testimonies highlighted her work at the kindergarten, her volunteer activities, and her gentle, unwavering commitment to those around her. The court understood that this case was not just about the crime itself, but about the life tragically. Interrupted Detective Marissa Hayes presented a reconstructed timeline of the night of October 12, 1977. Veronica had left the school at approximately 8:45 p.m., taking her usual route home. Barrett's confirmed presence along her path, supported by employment records, residential histories, and witness accounts, placed him near her at critical points. Visual reconstructions illustrated her route, locations of recovered evidence, and intersections with Barrett's movements, providing jurors a clear understanding of the events. Forensic experts explained the analyses that had breathed new life into the decades-old case. DNA sequences from hair fragments, fiber analysis, and fingerprints that had once seemed inconclusive were now definitive. Dr. Eliza Crane, the lead forensic analyst, described how advanced testing confirmed that hair found in Barrett's possession matched Veronica's. Fiber comparisons connected his clothing to the alley behind the school. Each expert emphasized that careful preservation of evidence, combined with modern technology, had transformed minor clues into decisive proof. Witnesses from 1977 also took the stand. One neighbor recalled seeing a tall man near the alley shortly after Veronica had left the school. A delivery driver recounted a green van parked suspiciously, with the driver watching the area intently. Though decades had passed, the consistency of these recollections, paired with forensic evidence, strengthened the prosecution's case. The defense attempted to cast doubt on decades-old memories and evidence, suggesting fibers and hair could have been transferred accidentally or coincidentally. The prosecution countered systematically, presenting meticulous documentation, independent verification, and corroborated witness statements, leaving the jury with a clear and credible narrative of Barrett's involvement. James and Carol Lane shared deeply personal testimony. James described Veronica's predictable routines, her careful attention to detail, and her thoughtful nature. Carol recounted her daughter's relationships with students, friends, and neighbors. Their words reminded the court that this case concerned a real person whose life had been violently disrupted and taken, highlighting the human cost behind the forensic evidence. Behavioral analysis of Barrett provided additional context. Experts outlined his prior offenses and patterns of behavior, demonstrating the plausibility of his encounter with Veronica. While not direct evidence of the crime, this analysis helped jurors understand the circumstances surrounding the disappearance. Evidence was presented visually through timelines, maps, and reconstructions, showing how Barrett's movements intersected with Veronica's route and aligned with forensic findings. Jurors could follow the case step by step, seeing how DNA, fiber, fingerprint, and witness testimony converged into a cohesive and compelling narrative. Whitaker's repeated denials were systematically addressed. Inconsistencies between his statements and verified evidence were highlighted. Each fiber match, DNA result, and fingerprint reinforced the prosecution's case, leaving minimal room for doubt. After days of intense testimony, the jury began deliberations. They reviewed forensic reports, witness statements, timelines, and reconstructed events with careful attention. Hours later, the courtroom filled with tense silence as the foreperson read aloud. "We, the jury, find the defendant, Leonard Barrett, guilty of first-degree murder and kidnapping." The courtroom erupted in a mixture of relief, tears, and quiet celebration. James and Carol Lane wept openly, finally able to release decades of grief and uncertainty. For nearly 50 years they had lived with unanswered questions and the anguish of the unknown. Now justice had been served. Friends, neighbors, and community members shared quiet congratulations and solemn acknowledgments of a long-awaited resolution. The resolution of the case resonated far beyond the courthouse walls. Local and national media highlighted the power of modern forensic science, the importance of evidence preservation, and the tireless dedication of law enforcement and families in solving cold cases. Veronica Lane's story became a symbol of persistence and hope, showing that even decades-old mysteries could be solved. Memorial services celebrated Veronica's life, her contributions, and her enduring impact on those who had known her. Scholarships and mentorship programs were established in her memory, focusing on early childhood education and community service. Friends and family organized events to honor her legacy, ensuring that her story would continue to inspire and leave a positive mark on future generations. James and Carol Lane became advocates for cold case awareness, speaking publicly about the importance of evidence preservation, persistence, and the use of modern forensic methods. Their advocacy inspired other families, demonstrating that long unsolved cases could still see resolution, and that hope, however delayed, could be realized. The Wichita Police Department also incorporated lessons from the case. Procedures for evidence preservation, systematic review of unresolved cases, and interagency collaboration were strengthened. Veronica Lane's case became a model, demonstrating how decades-old evidence, when preserved and analyzed with modern forensic science, could lead to accountability and justice. Veronica's legacy extended beyond the courtroom. Programs established in her name supported education, mentorship, and community engagement. Friends and colleagues organized remembrance initiatives to honor her life, ensuring that the story of her resilience, dedication, and the pursuit of justice would continue to inspire future generations. Detective Marissa Hayes reflected on the investigation. Time does not erase the truth. Every note, every fiber, every witness account mattered. Even decades later, these details formed the foundation for uncovering the truth. Her words captured the broader significance of the case, highlighting the lasting impact of diligent cold case investigations and the perseverance required to bring closure after so many years. The streets of Wichita, once silent witnesses to Veronica's disappearance, now symbolized resilience, justice, and the strength of community. Collaboration between law enforcement, family, and neighbors ensured her memory was honored, and that the truth had finally emerged, even after decades of uncertainty. The uncertainty that had shadowed the Lane family for nearly half a century was finally replaced with clarity. The resolution of Veronica Lane's case demonstrated that persistence, modern forensic methods, and community engagement could overcome time and doubt. Families, investigators, and communities were reminded that dedicated effort could illuminate even the darkest pasts. Veronica Lane's story is a testament to hope, perseverance, and the enduring power of justice. Her life, her contributions, and the tireless efforts of those who refuse to forget ensured that her story would inspire others to continue seeking truth, preserving memory, and holding perpetrators accountable. Through her legacy, it became evident that time may pass, but justice can prevail, and the lives of victims will never be forgotten.